Hello, Audible listeners. My name is Craig Ferguson. I'm very excited to be with you all here today with my friend and best-selling author David Duchovny to chat about his new Audible original, The Reservoir. I'm going to be saying Audible quite a lot, David, because the people at Audible really like it when you plug them. To be honest, I think they're more concerned about Audible than they are about your story, which is excellent, by the way. Well done.
Well, I have changed my middle name from William to Audible, so I think
That's
I've
very
given
nice.
them, given them what they
I think
want,
it's a
but
good thing.
still they want more.
I'm I'm sticking with Craig, Disney, ABC, CBS, Peacock, Ferguson, Netflix.
Let me
The
just
third.
say, well, I used to be asked that question back in the day when I was first doing interviews about X-Files, and my name was Fox Mulder, and I was on Fox, and I said, when they were shopping the show around, the character's name changed from Fox to ABC Mulder to NBC Mulder to, but it's stuck
Is
on
that
Fox.
true? That's not true.
That's not true.
Not true.
Yeah.
Listen, David, I wanted to talk to you because you asked me to, and but I listened to the Audible. Do we call it a story? Do we call it a novella? What do we call it? A short story?
I think I'd be safe. I think you should call it an Audible.
An Audible, yeah, that's a good idea. So I listened to your Audible, and I was kind of, first of all, congratulations on the writing of it and the performance of it, because it really is, it's wonderful. But I would expect no less. But here's the thing, it's a bit of a fever dream of a story, and I was a little worried about you because I thought, are you crazy right now? Are you a little crazy right now? Or are you okay?
All right. I'd be glad to answer that question. But first, I want to say two things. One is I miss you. I miss you. I miss seeing you on the air. I miss your consciousness on television. I think you are missed by us here in the States and wherever else that damn show you're beamed. And I hope to hear your voice again soon, because I think not only are you a wonderful interviewer, but you are a consciousness that has a lot to offer. So,
well, thank you very much indeed. But I have said everything that I want to say about everything. So I've got nothing more to add to the consciousness.
That's fair.
But I am interested in this story. I'm going to force you back to it, because
I will answer. I'm not.
Did
Did
you get COVID?
Yeah, I did.
Did you
get COVID?
But I didn't.
Yes, I did. But I didn't have the kind of hallucinations. It didn't get as bad as to kind of make my brain foggier. And I had a very kind of mild case, I guess. I did get sick, but it was fairly mild. And really the inspiration for this story was that I have been living on Central Park West in New York for the past 8 or 9 years as my kids went to high school there. It didn't take them 8 or 9 years to get through high school, but that's how long I've been there. And I have this amazing view of the reservoir. And then during the lockdown, I just started taking those time-lapse photographs that the character in the story takes. So that kind of, it's not me, it's not my state of mind at this time, nor did I ever endure those kind of fever dreams. But the beauty of that view and looking at that beauty, that kind of desolate beauty of the lockdown, because the city was shut down, there was nobody out there. It was really just like looking at nature, in a weird way, which is very weird when you think about New York City. Just kind of started to ring bells for me in my head about some kind of a story. I never thought, I'm going to write a pandemic story. It just seemed like it's not kind of the way my creativity works, like to address the moment, but it just happened this way.
I didn't take it as a pandemic story. I took it as an existentialist crisis, and maybe a meditation on mortality and reflection. But I didn't think it was particularly. It was as much to do with the pandemic as Moby Dick's to do with a fish. It's. I feel like it is an artist as the shadows begin to get a little longer in their life. Is that fair, you think?
Absolutely. I hate to admit it, but yes, that is fair. You know, one starts to dwell on what's important, and I think what happens in moments like this, and it is referenced in the story, like in moments like the pandemic, these huge global tragedies that seem to affect everyone on the planet. And I went back in the story. I go back to 9/11 for a moment. So in my lifetime, or at least that I remember, it's not, you know, the JFK assassination and this and that. It's 9/11 and then the pandemic. And what happens is these events bring us together, yes, but they also kind of engender this kind of epiphany of, oh my God, all that other stuff is meaningless. What counts is my family, my love, my friends, my human connection. And we say we're I'm never going to forget that. I'm always thank you for that revelation. I will live my life differently. And then I'm always confused because that lasts about 6 months, and after about 6 months of normality coming back, then you're like the same callous asshole that you were before, and you forgot about the lesson of love. I'm speaking only of you. That's why I say you, Craig. I'm talking about you. Not,
Well,
not
I think what's quite interesting about that, though, is that although there's a lot of personal reflection in the reservoir, which is clearly is something that you're going through personally. There's a lot of discussion about the jaded, paranoid nature of societal beliefs. What I mean by the kind of stolen elections and all that whole discussion
yes.
and the belief and the burying of old bad stories deep in the soil under the water. Is it something that's come up for you? Um, is it something that makes the world seem darker to you? Does the world seem darker to you now than it did when you were shopping, ABC or Fox Mulder around Hollywood, or is it better?
Well,
Is it a sweeter planet?
oh, it's hard to distinguish the darkness and the light for me between youth and where I am now. So, of course, I'm going to look back on that time as being filled with light and hope and potential. And it's not like my life turned out badly. I'm happy for all that happened. But, at that point, anything could happen. And my dreams it was just potential. So I think back then as a light period, but that doesn't mean the world was lighter. I think what I'm dwelling on in the story is the kind of sense of how everybody wants a story to make sense, and what we're getting now with the conspiracies and the Q and all that are these kind of crazy uber narratives that kind of draw everything and everyone together. And that is what we want as human beings. We do want the story to make sense. And I think, unfortunately, we live in a chaotic, nonsensical world, and we're constantly fighting against the truth of that, which is that these conspiracy theories, these master narratives are kind of bullshit. However comforting they may be, even in their paranoia and their anger, they're still comforting. It's like, now I've got an enemy. I'm going to go fight that enemy because they're doing these things. And I was just saying, I guess I'm not making fun of that. I guess I'm saying that is very human and very understandable. And I get it. I get it. I just don't agree with that particular narrative, but I get the desire for it. And I get the vulnerability of it, really.
I didn't get a sense that you were poking fun at or making fun of anyone in particular. What I kind of took away from it, but initially, and I don't think the people at Audible will love me saying this, but because it's a written experience, some of the prose is so rich that it goes by very quickly when it's narrated like that. And
Yeah.
I wonder, do you do you feel more drawn to write a piece and perform it, or is it a byproduct of writing a piece and then it's now a fact of life that you must do an audio version of it?
It's a little bit of both. I mean, I think that, and I'm sure you've had this experience as a writer and as a performer, and the difference between stuff that works on the page versus stuff that works on the stage. And I have always written to be read, and I've recorded audiobooks of my novels with a kind of chip on my shoulder, with a sense of this is not what you're supposed to be doing with these words. You're supposed to be reading them. And I've also noticed that there are times when my prose is difficult just to be read, you know, that the sentences are long and they're hard to continue the thought through them if it's just kind of landing on your ears, me speaking it. I also had a chip on my shoulder with performing those books because I was like, the words stand alone. The words are good enough. I'm not going to dress them up and try to charm you and try to emotion you into some kind of a feeling as a performer. I just want these words to stand. But with the last novel, Truly Like Lightning, and with this, I kind of gave over to this reality, which is that a lot of people do consume stories this way. And of course, I mean, it's older than words. You know, telling stories by the campfire is older than words themselves. So it's not like I'm going to go, hey, that newfangled convention of oral storytelling, I can't, that's bullshit. You know, so it's a totally legitimate form, but there are considerations to think about when you go to record, I think. And I think a richness of language is not necessarily a benefit, you know.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, it's almost like two separate things. But if you look at the tradition of Mark Twain would read his stories, Charles Dickens would read his stories, you know, they perform their stories. Socrates didn't even write anything down. How lazy is that? He would be perfect for Audible. But the idea of creating a piece which, you know, because it's an original, it's an Audible original, are you conscious in the writing of it that this is not quite how I would put it if it was going to be printed? Or do you, you know, write it and be damned and then worry about how it's going to sound later?
Yes, I wrote it and be damned. I didn't know what I was writing. I knew it wasn't a novel. I'd never written a short story, and I had a sense that this might be a short story. And then it got long. And then I thought, well, where is there a place that I can share this? There aren't that many places. It's really an in-between kind of a piece. And luckily and very happily, I found Amazon Audible. It wasn't really something that I was that aware of. So I didn't change much in the writing of it. Maybe when I was reading it, I noticed some stuff that I wanted to change, and I might have. I can't remember, but certainly it's a different vibe. And moving forward, I would consider that. You know, I would consider the style when I consider the medium.
Is it something that the temptation, whenever I've done audio versions of books that I've written, the temptation for me is to improvise around words which I already own, but you can't really, it doesn't really seem like that's possible. Is that something that came up when you were doing it, when you were recording it? Did you think, I can be funnier here, I can be darker here, I can say it a different way? Or did you, once you were there, that was it, you weren't going to change it?
I thought about, I think I changed some things. I had described the Bear Man as sounding like Barry White with a German accent. And I thought, I can't do that, you know? So I just kind of made my voice as deep as possible. I cut the reference to the German accent. And I just tried to sound like Barry White. So
I think that I could maybe have a crack at Barry White with a German accent, but I don't know. Maybe I don't know.
I should have called you.
For the next one, call me to do the bear guy. I think that I can handle that voice.
Well, I know you have a soft spot for animals. Your sidekick was a horse for a while, and you're beautiful that way.
Oh, hold on a second. Hi, come and say hi to David. David's Ross Stewart. What is it you need? I'm kind of busy.
I don't know the internet password.
The internet password for here?
Yeah.
I absolutely can't tell you right now. No, it's not. No, it's not that. No.
It doesn't work.
All right. Well,
this is
not on Zoom. Oh, I'm actually doing a thing. Can you? I'll be right there. I promise you. All right.
Okay.
All right.
That's called choosing work over family. We just watched it happen in real time.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry about that. But is this work? I don't know. I think technically, if it's work, you get paid. So I don't think this is work. I think this is.
You should
this
say
is me
Audible.
talking to my pal with a lot of people listening. So let me ask you this then: the idea of creating written pieces as you move forward, is it something you can say? Like if you say you start working, whenever I start writing I don't know if it's a book or a short story or just something that I'm filling my time with, or a piece of stand-up or nothing at all.
Yeah.
And usually at a certain point in the process, it starts to suggest itself what it's going to be. Yes. Do you think now that you will be led into that after this experience, that you'll go, this is clearly something that should be said?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if I were to start writing something that started to sound to me like an interior monologue that was extending kind of just a consciousness without a particular plot-heavy story that was coming out, but the story was thought rather than what happened, then I might think of it as a performance piece. I might think of it as, let's go back to like Spalding Gray. Remember his stuff, like Swimming to Cambodia, that fantastic, like he's sitting at a desk with a notebook, charmingly with like a little kid's notebook that he's got notes on, and he's basically just a consciousness speaking, telling stories. And I can see the Audible version of that being a very effective way to kind of put that over, rather than, but in addition to reading it.
What about in the situation like you said, remember, Barry White with a German accent? So you're talking about a character. When you think about dialogue of characters within a piece, is there is there a process which allows it to say, all right, I'm going to read the story, but I'm going to bring in my friend Craig to do this character. I'm going to bring in, somebody else to do that character because I want that voice to be different from my own.
Yes, I've had that discussion when I've recorded the novels. I've talked to the powers that be about bringing people in for characters, because I loved too when I was a kid, and even driving in LA 10 years ago, they used to have like a radio station that played old radio plays, like The Shadow and stuff like that. And the experience of kind of listening and the theater of your mind, which is probably dangerous when you're driving, trying to imagine, what you're not seeing, but hearing. And I love that form. And but there was kind of a pushback against, it seems when people are reading their books or having their books read, that it's one person that does it. There's one person, and that person might try to do characters. They might try to do accents. They might try to range their voice differently for men and women, but mostly it doesn't seem to be cast in that way. But I would definitely be interested in doing that for my stuff, and I would like to hear it as well, radio play type stuff.
I think I should do. I think also if you're in a situation where you have a character who's either from a very different ethnic group or background than yours, then it could get uncomfortable for you to, you as the author who's not in that group or from that group or in that or of that, gender or it could be tricky to go through that now. I think that might be something. I wonder about.
I think it is tricky these days for sure, and I think the risk you run is say let's say I'm going to do a female character, and I pitch my voice up higher. That becomes assailable as that's what you think women sound like, and I'm just trying to do a character. I'm trying to do a woman. This character, I'm trying to portray this person in this book, and all of a sudden, when somebody does that, it becomes generalized. It's like, oh, that's and that's the danger of it. And I think we lose a certain amount of nuance in that, and I think it's probably okay to be that sensitive right now, but that's where we're at.
Yeah, I think it's something. It's because it's actually. I think what I feel like we're coming towards is it is a different medium. So
Mhm.
if it's just writing, then it's fine. But if it is a different medium, so I don't think, and I got a very strong sense of that actually from the Reservoir, that it is a thing on its own, an Audible, if you like,
Right.
is a thing on its own, and the rules will be different as this sort of. I mean, you're right. There's nothing new about it, but this form of uh, of art goes forward, there will be different and new rules about who can do what and who can say what, and I think it will reflect in the writing of them too. I think the idea of the person that wrote it has to say it will be seen as Luddite and purist after a while.
Yeah.
I actually I wrote a short story for an anthology of short stories based on the work of Edward Hopper, and that was turned into an Audible. And I did not read the story. It was written by a very talented actor whose name escapes me for the moment, Andrew Yule, I think his name was. And he did a much better job of reading the story than I would have ever. He made it much better, and I wonder about that. That is there someone that you would choose to read your stories? Perhaps your friend Craig would do a good job, or
Yeah. Yes. I am all for that. I feel like once I've written something out to my satisfaction, I'm done with it. I'm done fiddling with it or whatever. that was I did that, and other incarnations that it's going to take as an Audible, as a movie, as a whatever. I welcome other people's perspective now because now it's something different. And I'm blind to certain implications of my own work, of course, as are you. We have big blind spots. And if an intuitive actor comes to it and is seeing things that I never saw, fantastic. And then I'll take credit for it and say, yeah, I meant that all along. But I
yeah.
want that. I want that.
What if you get to a situation where you think, all right, you've worked in show business for a very long time and you know a lot of very talented people. So is there an idea where you think to yourself, look, I want to write a story and the protagonist is this guy or this woman, and I don't want to read it. It is an Audible, but I don't and can't read it, but I will write it as an Audible for something else. So starting to do it in the way that we would write parts for people in movies or plays, where you have the actor in mind and make it happen that way.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
I think it would be.
Yeah, and I think it's a whole it's a whole area to think of as well. And when I did, I had a novel called Miss Subways, which had a female protagonist, and that was one time when I said going in, I would like my ex, Taya Leone, to read that part, and she did, and she did a fantastic job, way better than I ever would have done, and that's just they let me do that, I guess, because I said, oh, I'm going to get this famous person to come in and read for free as well, so I think it'd be fun to cast. I think it would be fun to try to write. It's almost like if you were thinking about writing stand-up for somebody, like that would be like, wouldn't it be fascinating if you wrote some stand-up and gave it to me? Give it to me to do it. And I'm telling all these Scottish jokes that I don't understand.
But I wouldn't write those for you. I would write those for me. They are for me. I wonder, how do you consume I mean, do you consume a lot of audibles? Are you still a purist when it comes to the no, purist is wrong actually. Do you read more? Do you listen a lot? Do you do it?
Well, I'm in the car, so I listen in the car, but I prefer to read. I know, I know that's sacrilegious, but I do. And not only that, I mean, I've got all these books on my electronic devices, and I use that, but there's nothing like having an actual physical book in my hand.
Yeah, I kind of like it too. Although I have started doing very recently, actually, just coincidentally with this, I had read a bunch of historical fiction stories by a guy called C.J. Sansom. They're called the Shardlake Mysteries, and it's about a lawyer in England at the time of Henry VIII, and he's kind of connected to what's going on at the court. This is a fascinating book, and I read all of the books, and now I'm listening to them, like years after reading them, and it's very comforting. I kind of love it.
Yeah. No, I've enjoyed times when it's almost like, I think I'll go to the market because I want to do some reading in my car. You know, I want to hear a chapter, you know, so but I got nowhere to go.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
I think that's a cool thing to do. And I wonder, in the future how that will, if it would. I mean, you're right. I'm kind of thinking of this as something that is kind of new, but it's kind of not. It's kind of old. It's the old. Yeah.
It's the oldest. Here's a couple things to think about. For me, anyway, somebody described a book to me, not a particular book, but a book, the generic book idea of a book, as the first computer. And I said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "It's the first time that knowledge was stored outside of the human brain." You know.
Okay.
So I was like, "Oh, that's a really fascinating way to look at what books are." You know, it's like we can't hold all the knowledge in our brains. We're just not equipped. So we've got to put some stuff out there that we can then go reference. And I also think, however, that there is a very different mental process. And I'm not a scientist, and I've never seen the video of where the areas of the brain is lighting up when you're listening as opposed to when you're reading. But I do think there are virtues to both, you know, and I do think there's nothing like reading. Like reading to me is really how you become human. I mean, it's how I became empathetic. How it's like allowing somebody's voice to take over your mind. You know, there's a real surrender in it. Is listening the same? I don't know, maybe, but still. It is.
I think it does. I think for me it does. It does kind of the same. I still kind of get into it. And let me steer you back to actually this, because in the reservoir, which is I think listening to it is less than 2 hours, right? I mean I can't remember how long it is, but it's a couple hours long. And I listened to it, and in that, and because I know you and I've known you for a long time, I'm very comfortable with your voice, as many people are, because you know they know who you are and they've heard you and seen you in a lot of things. And it was a very comfortable. The phrase you used there, the idea of someone else's voice taking over your mind, is exactly kind of the experience of it. So in that process, that little journey that you took me on in the reservoir, I found it quite, and when I started off talking to you at the beginning, I found it quite, it's dark. It's a dark ride. It's funny because you're funny and it's charming and it's sweet, but it's really complicated, and it's very nuanced by, I think, a lot of other mortality-based stories. Death in Venice, I felt was a player.
Absolutely.
And I felt everything you write. I always think there's a whiff of Holden Caulfield in there somewhere as well. There's a foot stamp in there somewhere, and I wonder if you feel endarkened. I think even the phrase, I didn't write it down because I was listening, but I think it was the phrase, "the light that only the darkness can bring," or something that you say in the rambles part of it. And do you feel endarkened by the world? You know, do you feel the Enlightenment is in a boomerang and the world is getting darker, or is it just your world, or is it the world?
It's not my world. The world, I don't know that it's darker. I don't think so. I just think it's noisier. I think it's busier. I think it's more intrusive. I think I don't think there's any way to downplay the effect of screens and phones. And it's so new. It's 10 years old. I mean, it's 10 years and it's completely taken over. I mean, it is our lives. And the pandemic drove that even home further, where we were driven home and had our only experience of the world was like us right now, speaking to each other through screens. I'm not saying good or bad. I'm just saying that's a revolutionary thing that happened. And we don't know yet what the fallout is. We don't know yet. We're going to adapt. That's what human beings do. And obviously we made these things and we'll adapt to them. But for somebody that like me, who feels like in transition, who's seen the world, what I feel like the world change, I'm a little confused, and that could be seen as darkness. I'm a little attached to my old ways. I'm a little attached to reading. You know, I'm a little attached to this or that. So, but in the end, I mean, to me, and in the story, it really came down to, you know, familial love. It came down to the love of a father for a daughter. It came down to love, you know, as simple, as sweet, and as cliche as that is. That's the last thing that person thinks is love, you know, and that could be, you know, the ultimate conspiracy, you know, who knows if it's real or not, but it's the best fiction that we have, this idea that we love. And
Are you very connected to the changes in the world right now? Are you very connected to social media? Do you follow it? Do you spend a lot of time on these devices? And
no, not on purpose. I don't seek it out. I was never very political, but in the age of Trump, you know, from 2016 to 2020, I was hooked intravenously to the 24-hour news cycle. It did me no good, but it kept me busy in some way, kept me very unproductive. You know, it was almost like a zombie effect, you know, where you talk about somebody else's voice in your mind. I was just like in that narrative. Every day I needed more of that crazy narrative that was happening. I needed to see how it ended because, God damn it, I wanted it to end, you know. And as soon as Biden was elected, I kind of stopped watching MSNBC, which is what I've been watching for 4 years. I loved Chris Hayes and Rachel Maddow every night, and then all of a sudden, I don't need to watch them every night.
It's interesting. It's funny because I politically, even to have a discussion with your friend about an Audible, if you get into the world of discussing politics, suddenly, because media now is such a, it's such a tinderbox that any discussion you have will be, I feel like the media now is like you ever what, when your kids are toddlers and they play soccer, they don't play soccer like soccer is played. It's just the ball goes that way, they all go, oh, they'll run that way, and then the ball goes that way, oh, they'll run that way. And I feel like the media, for the amount of media there is, they just don't follow the ball. No one goes, hang on a minute, I'm going this way. It's like, oh, oh. And it's toddlers playing soccer, man. I find I can't watch it. And weirdly enough, I had the opposite reaction after 2016. I was like, I'm done. And I've kind of stayed done. I have a Twitter account, which I think somebody probably posted the Audible thing on, but I don't I don't connect to it anymore because I feel like the flavor right now is you either agree with me or you're wrong. It's not you disagree with me, it's you're wrong. Do you have an appetite for debate and fiery interaction anymore?
No, I never did. I never did really, because I think politics is very it's a game of force and simplicity. I mean, you can't win at it. I mean, Obama's kind of an outlier. He's a fairly nuanced individual, but in general, you don't get very far in that being nuanced. And that's all I'm interested in, really, is nuance. And if I was to go into a debate, halfway through it, I'd start to go, that guy's got a point. He's got a point.
Yeah, that's why I like. Oh yeah, now as you say that, yeah, let me think about that. Yeah, that's not everybody that way. Everybody that way.
Right.
David, I've been informed by the Audible crack staff, the Audible overlords, that we're out of time. But
sadly,
congratulations on the story. It's really it's the best Audible I've audled, and it's really lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely is the
Craig.
wrong word.
Thank you. Thank
you
for doing this. And it's really a pleasure to see you and to talk as we talk over each other.
It's more about that thing.
And I will call you tomorrow with this story that I need to tell you.
You got it.
Okay.
Take it easy.
Thank you, Craig.